All right. Good afternoon. I'm Leslie Wolf with IN3 Tradewind, and this is the Business Process Transformation track. Would like to introduce John Scott with Ion Channel for the next presentation. Go ahead, John. Take it away.
Yep. Yep. Hi, good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. I'm John Scott from Ion Channel. I'm the president and COO of Ion Channel. And so I'm going to go through some work around software supply chain. So just some intros. Feel free, but my email is john.scott, SCOTT, @ionchannel.io. Since we're not allowed to ask questions. So with that, I'll dive into my presentation. So bottom line, software supply chain. So just some of the kind of where we start off with this is that, you know, software developers won't, or don't follow best security practice. Security rules or best practices, and so that's just basically a problem that we have ongoing. I mean, as you know, for example, people still click on phishing links, get hacked in very simple ways, and so problem is just you've lost a perimeter. We need more vigilance, and also to add to that, we're now relying on third party open source software or paid software with little to no influence around how that software is built. So once again, you're back to the developer problem, and so the perimeter is gone. So the impacts are that we can't protect consumer or corporate data. The ability to operate the business is damaged now, and reputation and market cap, as we've seen with the current crop of software supply chain attacks. And so where we sort of start off is that there are really sort of four types of software developers that are out there. You have the good, the ones who are trying to do their best, every day. The bad or malicious who are really trying to hack into your organization and do bad things. You have the ignorant or the new people who just don't know enough about it. And you also have the rebellious who know enough but think that the rules don't apply to them. And those developers are found both internally, contractor, and also in third-party code that you're bringing in. Part of the problem is that you've also got this whole issue of some of the business owners basically are responsible for building this, but the higher ups with security are the ones who are really dealing with software development. Sorry, too many those open. And so what we really were trying to move towards is really establishing or kind of recreating the security perimeter through monitoring and transparency of software development and risk. And so for what we do, we're helping, creating visibility so you can do discovery analysis of the software supply chain for monitoring, reporting, really getting towards risk scoring, and then doing this on a continuous basis. Because if you're not doing software supply chain analysis and security continuously, there's no way you're going to actually have a chance to get ahead of the problems. And so with that, you have to look at, and then we can also help with remediation actions and audit kind of going forward, so you can really kind of get towards this problem. And so, we really are basically helping reestablish the perimeter for folks, because you're going to have bad software that's going to come into organizations, and you need to have a chance to look at like what software is out there. And so some folks say, well, so what? What does this really matter? Like, what do you really find? And I think that what we've seen is that there are ideological motivated saboteurs who are trying to get into software. And what you're seeing this in the current crop of the Ukrainian, people who think that they're supporting the Ukrainian war by self-sabotaging their own open source software projects. And so the issue becomes is that these projects are in your, are to some extent you have a new insider threat in your organization now, because these projects are being brought in and you know what's going on. And so, in this case, this person sabotaged their own project. It was being brought into organizations, and if it found a .ru email address or domain within the code somewhere, it would basically sort of sabotage that website. And so you're seeing more of this stuff out there. And so as this stuff comes in with little to no vetting, and none of the stuff is vulnerable, it's just basically built to be broken. So it's functioning as required, but it's there. You also have the problem of, what software component analysis tools can't tell you. So this is from a software bill of materials. We do software bill of materials analysis as well. So in this case, we've done some work for a software medical device manufacturer, and we've been going through some of their software supply chain, helping them organize it. And we found this person who had somehow gotten their code all the way into their repos, but we found it because of Chinese language and single committer. So single committer open source software, some of the most risky software to use, because it's just one person monitoring and building that piece of software project. And so, this person was an actual hacker. They got into the repo, and we were able to identify it as something risky in their code, and promptly sent the company on a huge freak out. Or you have the problem of folks like this, Maroc Swires, who was angry that he wasn't being paid for all the people who used his open source software project, and he once again kind of sabotaged his own project. And that got pulled into a bunch of people's projects. And so you have this whole issue of, you've got to be managing your software. If you don't know what you have, you can't really you can't defend what you don't know you have. And so, there's this whole problem of repositories in common. So, we've done some work with DoD and the IC, and you find this problem of, some major systems are based on TikTok code. Down deep in the dependencies, and people just don't know what's going on. But then if you start looking deeper, you can you have to go really look beyond just vulnerabilities, because one of the biggest issues that we run into is that if you're just looking for vulnerabilities are a lagging indicator. Go to the slide first. And the problem is that somebody has to get interested enough in that piece of software to go off and find the vulnerability and then report it and then have it get fixed and patched. And that whole process can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months or 9 months, or I think it's more like 18 months now. So while that you're flying in the blind, but also setting your entire security process up to wait for 0 days to come out and then hope you can quickly go find them and fix them in your infrastructure is just really sort of a way of I like to say you're building, better barn door sensors. So you've got to start looking at other metrics to get ahead of the problems, because some of the issues we run into is that 14% of developers can consider security a top priority. And it's really not fair to make developers put all the burden onto developers when they're just trying to get their code to compile. Because, should they be using a piece of software that comes from an OFAC sanctioned entity? I don't know. Should they be using a piece of software that's over 2 years old? And so working with various customers and clients of ours, you can get into this mode where folks like from the Mayo Clinic, they have active terms and conditions for active maintenance of open source software projects. So what they say is you can't to bring a piece of software inside the Mayo Clinic, and they get attacked all the time by the Chinese. It has to be up to date. It has to be new. It has to be managed. So, it has to be younger than 1 year. Because what they found is that there is a very direct correlation towards vulnerabilities and technical debt. Up until now, they had no way of managing this on a continuous basis, and that's what we've been able to help them with. And so you have this issue of, and they have other terms and conditions that we can help automate. And so we can also do audit and detection. So our model is that you start to automate this software ingest. You have a software gateway. You basically start to manage this on a continuous basis for things that are coming into your software. And so the way that we typically work is that folks have a software gateway where we're helping manage the ingress for a number of different factors, not just vulnerabilities. Obviously you shouldn't be using a piece of software that has a vulnerability in it, but you should be looking beyond things like, is it single committer? Is it what language is it being developed in? We bring a lot of data to the fight that folks can't even really understand what's going on, and then do that on a continuous basis once you've deployed software. And so we can ingest software bills of material for commercial software, open source software, or internally built software, because one best practice that's coming up is, as you deploy a piece of software, someone should be managing this, because especially with things like containers are going to walk. They're going to go all over the enterprise, especially when you start talking about air-gapped networks. And so you have to start doing that. And so some of the metrics that we bring to the fight are, end of life detection, developer turnover rates, mean time to failure, mean time to remediation, all these different metrics that are out there around software that no one has really sort of picked up and made valuable for how people really want to go about their businesses. Let's go into some of the things. So you can't do a live demo. So what we really look on is leading indicators, like I said before. And so, full data, full API, all open data formats. We charge per analysis or full enterprise licensing. But the whole idea is you've got to have a way of managing your software coming in and as it's deployed. DevSecOps is not going to solve all of your problems. You're not going to be looking at all this stuff. Why bring a piece of software in to build with that is going to fail in the build process? And so our view is really we need a way of managing the software on a continuous basis. So if you think about, back to our chart here, you've really got to kind of push the security envelope back out around the developers and making it much more of a built-in thing versus the way security is sort of thought is now as a bolt-on thing or something that's done at the end. And that means a lot of the security things that you're seeing downstream, a lot of the monitoring, endpoint detection, operational work that's happening downstream, you should be doing upstream as well. So with that, I will go into a little bit of a demo, if that's okay. I've got another 10 minutes here to go, so we'll just we'll roll into that. I just sorry to have it up. Really wish we could have questions, but okay. Okay, and so there's a little bit of a demo here. So in this project, this is a healthcare teams pilot. We've been doing some work with various healthcare companies and folks. And so in this instance, very simple rules are turned on. So no viruses, no higher critical vulnerabilities are here. So all these projects now right now are failing. So going into one that's CDC GeneFlow. This is a team that was building software to help manage and monitor the genes of COVID kind of going forward. So you can see here we've been working with this team for about over a year, and you can see that the team sort of ignored the project until the Delta variant came up, or Omicron variant came up at last summer, and then they all got back to work, and basically were working the project. And now they sort of abandoned it because they've already sequenced what they need to sequence, or that they sequenced the genes in this, and so they don't need to be following it anymore. And so we can give people a full feel of what's happening in this piece of software on a continuous basis without having to get into command lines or asking developers, and doing this at scale. And so you can see right now the project is hanging out with three high vulnerabilities. You can see they're pretty deep down. I mean, this is the issue with software, is that the pyramid gets really, really deep, really, really fast. And so you can see just by updating, it looks like this one twisted 22.04, this project could basically be stop being vulnerable. Now, some of the other issues we've run into is there are projects like the front end for the Veterans Affairs website. Some of the issues you run into is that, and all these tiles could be rule sets that could be based off of anything. One thing you can see is that the dependencies are outdated. You can see the risk in this project is just hiding out in all this technical debt. You've got 7.6, major versions behind. We could also do this based on time, like how long. These are just looking at major versions, but we also have the ability to look at if it's over 6 months old, fail the project, start to get people to do it. And so some of our military customers are using this as a way of sort of prodding developers and the contractors to say, all right, you've got the software, it's really, really getting old. You're 5 major versions behind. How are you going to update to the newest versions? And so up until this point, the only way to get that data was to bother developers. And so, we've got a really good way of ingesting. We can export, we can create and export software bills of material. We can also export the software and the report itself. So that way, if you want to move things high side or from high side or classified, to classified networks or via VPCs, we can also do. The cool thing is that since we really validate the names of pieces of software, we can start to do portfolio views. So just looking at vulnerabilities here, we can start to look at where Log4j might be, which projects. I mean, this one's a 7.8 or 10. Log4j is in 5 projects. You can start to see which projects they're in. But the cool thing is that you can start to do this for single committer projects, aging projects. I mean, this one's GTAS has 1,400 developed vulnerabilities. The thing is, you need a way of doing this. But just on these 35 projects, you can see that there's 48,000 outdated dependencies. I mean, that's the haystack that you're running in right now. And so we can bring lots of data to the fight, probably more data to the fight than folks can really even deal with for what they're looking at. But I mean, this product is just sort of riddled with vulnerabilities, even critical vulnerabilities that are there. And people will argue that maybe they're not fixable, maybe they're not important, or you can work around them. I mean, my view is that if you have 9, definitely some of those are going to be broken. And so that's really sort of where we get off is we do a lot of this great work. It's all modern architecture, API driven. And so that's just really what we're trying to solve the whole upstream problem for software coming in. We can, download and create, SBOMs, all the different SBOM formats that are out there. We can import them. So we're really probably one of the leaders in all this kind of software supply chain intelligence market that's out there. I think my time might be almost up. I wish we do questions. I think, Leslie, that's about all I have. I can give people back a few more minutes.
You actually have 5 minutes. You're good to go.
Oh, okay. I'll throw up my backup deck here, and we can kind of walk through some of the more interesting things that we do. Oftentimes, people start asking us, is they're really kind of concerned about, what suppliers might be out there. And, we can start to give people a feel for, who's in your, who's actually supporting your software throughout the enterprise. And so just look, we did some work. We looked at just some very simple targets, and the amount of software that was in the defense AI/ML that's actually being supported by the PRC is pretty interesting. Large percentages of the software is actually just coming from Chinese developers. And I think that people are just sort of accepting of that, but when they're not even really looking at that, the deeper software supply chain, just the ecosystem of what's out there, which makes sense. I mean, it is a global market now, but I think when you start looking at things going into critical industries and critical infrastructure, making decisions on things, not actually managing this, and this is more of an issue of, if you have a piece of software that you're actually running something important on, and you don't have a good handle on where it's coming from or who's developing the software, that means this entire group could walk away, and then your entire project might be screwed because you wouldn't have any developers who understand what's going on. So you need to at least do something more than just a passing flare of software. Some other things that we look at, we can also start to look at like compromised credentials in the source code. This is important because you have these people who are essentially your software suppliers who are you're sucking in their code, they're leaving in their credentials. This person's software, is basically run by one of France, eventually makes its way into France Telecom and their software, and their credentials are all out there. We look at dependencies, we look for nation state funding and actors and things like that. And so there's just lots of these issues that we run into, or things like NumPy, where people just don't know that, it's run by Huawei, or SML Alchemy is. And so that's the biggest thing that we're looking at. And that's how we really start to differentiate what we're doing. Or geography, when code is committed. We can probably bring more data to the fight than folks really can really even handle or understand. But I think it kind of really all goes back to this thing of like, you've got to figure out a way of reestablishing some sort of a parameter with monitoring, with transparency of what you're using, so that you can get a better handle on what you have. So that way you're not just waiting around for risk to kind of come up and slap you in the face, especially when you're starting to use software that you didn't pay for or didn't build, and you're just using for free. And so that's what we're really trying to help people do and fix. So you're not just like left getting into trouble. I think that's sort of all I have, Leslie.
Oops, I'm on mute. All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, and thanks for the introduction to Ion Channel. And we'll be getting your contact information out to the folks that attended this meeting. And also, this will be recorded. There were several folks that wanted to also attend, but had various things going on, so they'll be able to watch as well.
Okay, yeah, please reach out. My name is John Scott, john.scott@ionchannel.io, and I'll love to give demos.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bye.